Okay, let's dive right in. We're breaking down a recent internal briefing from the VC firm A16Z, all about the state of the AI market. And, some of their findings were so surprising, they just had to share them publicly. So today, we're going to walk through exactly what they found.
And man, does that quote hit home, right? The pace of change in AI has been absolutely relentless. It really feels like we're all living in this constant state of warp speed, and it's just so hard to get a clear picture of what's actually going on.
And this really gets to the core paradox of the AI market right now. On one hand, you've got value being created faster and on a bigger scale than we've literally ever seen before, but on the flip side, the potential for a company to get completely wiped out has also never been higher or faster. It is a super high-stakes game.
Okay, let's kick things off by busting our first big myth, an assumption that completely dominated the early days of this whole AI boom.
The question on everyone's mind a couple of years back was pretty simple. Was one company, like an OpenAI, just going to win everything? Was it going to become the one single platform that everything else gets built on top of?
And look, early on, pretty much everyone said yes. It just made sense, right? One company builds the most powerful model, gets this massive, insurmountable lead, and basically captures all the value for themselves.
But here's where it gets really interesting. What actually happened was the complete opposite. Again and again, the first mover got outplayed. OpenAI was first with code. Boom, they lost to specialized tools. They were first with DALL-E for images. Nope, Midjourney completely took over that market. First with Sora for video, and now that whole space is blowing up into pieces. So instead of one big winner, we're seeing all these new, separate, multi-billion-dollar markets just pop into existence.
So, the big takeaway here? Thinking about this as some zero-sum game, a single pie to be won, was just wrong. The pie itself is getting bigger and splitting into a bunch of different, really valuable slices.
Okay, that leads us right into myth number 2, which was born from that whole winner-take-all idea, the fallacy of the so-called GPT wrapper.
Yeah, this term was thrown around everywhere, and it was pretty much an insult. The idea was, hey, if your app is just using someone else's model, you don't have a real business. You've got no moat, no protection, you're just a flimsy little layer on top of the real tech.
But, surprise, surprise, reality has completely smashed that cynical take. The new truth is that these specialized AI apps aren't just getting by. They are, and I'm quoting A16Z here, absolutely crushing it.
So, what's their secret sauce? Why are they winning? Well, it all comes down to a massive strategic shift. See, the actual cost of AI intelligence is cratering. It's becoming a cheap commodity. So the real value, the thing you can actually defend, isn't the model itself anymore. It's what you do with it. It's all about that last mile, solving those messy, complex customer problems that a generic AI just can't handle.
And just look at this data. It's absolutely insane. These AI-native companies are hitting huge milestones, like 100 million in revenue, at a speed that makes the last generation of software superstars look like they're standing still. We're talking about a completely different kind of growth curve here. So why aren't the big guys, the established software giants, just running the table? Well, it boils down to the classic innovator's dilemma. They're stuck trying to jam AI features onto their old profitable products. Meanwhile, these new startups are starting from scratch, totally reimagining how to solve problems with AI at the core. Okay, so if the old playbook is out the window, how do you actually build a business that lasts in this new world? What does the new rulebook even look like?
All right, so here's the new playbook for how to win. It's this really cool 3-step process. First, you use what A16Z calls AI magic, that initial wow factor that gets people hooked and solves that early user problem. But that magic doesn't last. So, step 2, and this is critical, you have to build traditional software modes, deep workflows, integrations, things that create real stickiness. And finally, step 3, you gotta win on brand. You have to become so well known that you're part of the conversation.
And look, this isn't just some theory on a whiteboard. It's working. It's working because these companies are delivering tangible, hard-to-ignore ROI for their customers. We're shifting away from let's play with AI budgets to show me the money budgets.
Check this out. A CTO reported a 10 times productivity boost for his dev team after they switched to an AI-native code editor called Cursor. Think about that. A year ago, people were excited about 10–15% gains. 10x? That's not just better, that's a whole new paradigm.
And it's not just coding either. Take customer support.
A company like Dagagon is putting up absolutely game-changing numbers. They're not just slashing costs by up to 80%. At the same time, they're doubling how many customer issues get solved automatically. And they're doubling customer satisfaction scores. That's the kind of insane, tangible value that fuels rocket ship growth.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What's the bottom line here? What do you really need to understand about this wild, high-stakes market?
You really need to let this quote sink in. This is not a market where a rising tide lifts all boats. What that means is, yeah, there's a ton of growth and opportunity, but success is absolutely not a given. In fact, because companies can get wiped out so fast, being able to pick the real winners is more critical than it's ever been.
All right, so let's boil it all down. First, this market is way bigger and moving way faster than anyone thought. That means the stakes are just incredibly high. Second, you can't confuse fundraising hype, the heat, with actual business momentum. They are not the same thing. And maybe the biggest takeaway is this. This shift is so huge, you are either in the game, on the field, or you're going to be irrelevant. Period.
And that leaves us with this one giant final question. The A16Z team thinks this is as big a deal as the invention of software itself. Now, if they're right, if that's true, then everything we've seen so far is just the opening act. The real question we should all be asking is, what gets built next?